Hello, guys, and welcome back to the Multifamily Man Podcast, powered by Total Wealth Academy. I'm the host, Angelo Webb. Thank you for joining me today. And today we're just going to continue the conversation about due diligence. This time we're going to focus on financial due diligence, which is important, right? Because that's what it's all about. Everything is based off the finances. Again, if you're new to multifamily kind of learning, always remember the price of a multifamily business, because that's what it is. It is a business. It's a property, but it's a business. The value of the property / business is based off the finances. Okay, it's not like your personal home that you live in. My neighbor sold for $300. My house is the same size, same condition. So I'm going to list it and sell it for $300 because where it's $300. That's not how it works, right? It's all based off the NOI, the net operating income, and the financial due diligence should allow you to figure out what the NOI is, right? Or what the trailing 12 is, right? For the last 12 months or 24 months, based off of these things, this is what the NOI is, because that's really what we're going to base our purchase price off of, not pro forma. Right? Not grandma's favorite grandson, right? With all of his perfect traits and his handsome smile and all that stuff. And there's nothing wrong with him, right? He's perfect. No, we're not basing it off of that crap. We're going to base it off the real. We're going to look at it for what it is and take it for what it is. We're not going to look at this property and romanticize it. We're not going to look at it and make it something it's not. It is what it is, and that's what we base our opinion off of, and that's what we base our buying decision off of, okay? So let's get into the financial due diligence, all right? Again, I have a list. I have a checklist that I use. I've been doing this. I've been in this industry over a decade. Been doing this part of things for about 6 years. I use this checklist. Like you never know enough to where you don't need a checklist. Use your checklist. Those fundamentals are important. You don't want to forget anything. All right. So the first thing you want to get is the current rent roll. All right. So the current rent roll will let you know what the vacancies are, if there are any vacancies coming up. Right. How new are the residents at the property? It also lets you know. All right, y'all say y'all at 100 occupied. Yeah, y'all are, but damn, 15% of that was in the last 3 months, and you guys gave them 2 months free, right? You'll know all of that. It'll tell you what the rent is versus what's being paid, right? They could say, yeah, rents here are $1,000 for a 2-bedroom, but they might have gave them a concession where they're only paying $800 a month, right? So it'll tell you all these things. The rent roll will also let you know what they're charging for other things. If they're charging for pet fees, if the people are getting covered parking, if they are renting washer dryers, all that stuff will also be on the rent roll. So this is what we really understand the revenue of the property. Excuse me. What the revenue of the property is. Okay, that rent roll is vital. Okay. Collection of rent is the next thing we're going to focus on and get. We want to see the delinquency report for the last 30, 60, and 90 days past due. All right, so anybody that is, first of all, anybody 90 days past due, exclude pandemic. All right, anybody 90 days past due should not be at your property. All right, maybe 60. Depending on the state that you live in or the municipality you live in, how fast they move with evictions. I know back in Missouri, evictions can take a long time in the city of St. Louis. That could take a while, all right? Especially if people know how to game the system, because they can go to the initial court date and say, I don't agree. I want a trial, right? So then it takes time to set up a jury trial, okay? So some people know how to game the system. Down here in Texas, though, they don't play. Like, if you don't have your rent in by the 3rd, you'll file eviction on the 4th. Like, you'll have a court date that same month. And so I mean, within 45 days, like, people have to vacate the property. You know what I'm saying? The sheriffs to be there ready to make sure they leave the property. So that's really going to depend on your state. But you do want to get the delinquency report for 30, 60, and 90 days past due. Okay. That just helps us identify, residents that may be issues in the future as far as rent collections, or some that might be struggling. And guys, it's always an option to do what we call cash for keys. Okay. And what that means is exactly what it sounds like. Cash for keys. Like, there could be somebody there and they really could be falling on hard times, right? Like, and that's just real. I don't think there's a person in this world who has not fallen on hard times, who really could benefit more from somebody saying, look, I know you're going through a hard time. This is what we can do for you, instead of coming down on a pile of bricks that's already down, right? So you can always do cash for keys, but listen, man, you guys are 2 months behind. How about we give you X amount of dollars for you guys to move out, right? It works. It really does. People like, shit, all right. Because a lot of times they're in a situation because either they're underemployed or unemployed. And sometimes it happens out of nowhere, right? That's just the world we live in. That can happen out of nowhere. And they could have been great residents that whole time, and then something happened to where their income dries up or their income ends, and they're trying to make ends meet. They might be, they may be talking with you and all that. Sometimes the best thing to do is do cash for keys. It might be the best thing for them because they might have a down payment for somewhere that's cheaper for them to live, or they can go to maybe a family or friend, like, listen, I have this, I can give you this. I just need a place to stay for a while I get back on my feet or find a new place. All right. So that's what we really want to know with that delinquency reports, is, are these people, who are these individuals, who are these residents, so we can, again, have a plan of action and a solution to a potential problem or current problem. Then you also want the prepaid report. So you want to see who's paid up, right? Some people pay 3 months in advance. I've had people pay the whole lease in one sit, right? They may have a cosigner. Something common you see with students, especially if they come from a family that's more well off. They might have mom or dad as cosigner, or grandma or grandpa as cosigner. And they might just pay the whole lease up front, right? So you want to also know what the prepaids are. The next thing you want to get is the accounts receivables and the accounts payable reports for the past 24 months. And what this will allow you to do to see any trends, right? Is there a huge increase in accounts receivable or accounts payable, or is there a huge decrease, right? So that's really what you want to do. So the past 24 months, again, nothing can tell you the future, but past, what's indicated as a past is a great indicator for the future. So if we know for 24 months it's been within a certain range, we can expect it to stay there. Granted, nothing crazy happens, right? Granted, a COVID doesn't happen. Granted, market crash doesn't happen, a recession, depression doesn't happen, right? Those 24 months give us a good idea of what this property has consistently done and what we can expect it to do, right? But we're not buying the property unless we know we can increase what it's doing, right? But this gives us that baseline. All right, you want to see the property income and expenses for the last 3 years. All right, so simply put, we just call that a P&L, right? Preferably the last 3 years, definitely the last 2. And the P&L stands for profit and loss. Anybody who majored in business, any of my accountants out there, anybody with your MBA, you guys are very familiar with profit and loss. It's the exact same thing in this industry because it's just business, right? It's property, but it is just business at the end of the day. So you want that profit and losses report for the last 3 years. And again, this is just going to show you the trends, right? Are there any upward trends? Are there any downward trends? And the biggest thing is, if there's downward trends, let's do a, dig deep and see, why is it trending down, right? Because all you're doing is solving a problem. Once you figure out why it's trending down, you can fix that problem and stop that downward trend and reverse it, right? Do a 180 and you benefit from that. Okay. So then the next thing we're going to do is the owner/property tax returns for the last 3 years. Is it always necessary? No. But do you want to every time you can? Yes. All right. Because again, the tax returns and the end of the profit and loss statement, what the profit and loss comes out to in the tax statements, the tax returns, they should match. Right? That might be a good. Sometimes I've seen it where the tax return says one thing and the P&L says something. Right? So we know it's cooked. You can't cook no tax return. You can, but you might be in one of those Bernie Madoff jails for doing it, but you can do it. You feel me? Like you understand what I'm saying? Like you can do it, but more than likely that is going to be the truth, and you want to make sure that P&L and that tax return makes sense. It might be off here and there a little bit, but you want to make sure those things are damn near identical, if not identical, to know what's really going on. Right? Does the owner have a current operating budget? Sounds crazy, but yes, there are some properties that are out here just running, just living life, right? And just like individuals who don't have a budget in their personal finances, how they never have money, how there's not a savings account, how there's not emergency savings, how there's not a retirement fund, where it's not a college fund, and they're just paycheck to paycheck every month. There are properties and businesses in general, but there are properties that are operating like this, right? If they don't have one, that is a clear sign that they're spending too much money, right? More than likely, they're spending too much money where they shouldn't be and underspending in places that are important and they should be. And if they do have an operating budget, doesn't make sense. Like some budgets are extremely high. And you want to see, you'll look at, okay, this is their operating budget and this is the budget. These are the expenses, right? The P&L is going to tell us what the expenses are. This is the budget. These are expenses, right? And then you want to see you can do a variance report and say they're supposed to be spending $10,000 a year on waste removal, but they're spending $13,000, right? So we can see variances, and you can do your own calculations. Some of the stuff we'll talk about on how much should be spent per unit on certain things, and you can say, all right, we should be spending X amount per unit on waste removal. So we know this is what we will spend on it. So we know that we'll save $4,000. We say come out to it and say, yeah, they should only be spending $9,000. You know right away that you can save $4,000 on that expense. That's $4,000 that goes directly to your NOI and increases the value of your property, right? And then you want to work with the property management company on creating an annual operating budget, right? So the first one is definitely going to be projections, right? Again, we have what we believe you should be paying, or about what you should be paying per unit for every single thing, for every single expense. And that's really what you want it to be at. The things that you do not control in that process are taxes and insurance. Those are the property taxes, I mean. So the property tax and insurance are completely out of our hand. That's not something we have no control over. At the end of the day, that's in our circle of concern. And let's be aware of it, but not focus on it too heavily. And some people can argue it might be in our circle of influence, because you can protest, right, the taxes, and you can shop around to get better insurance, right? The other good thing is having a great property. If you're using a third-party management company or you're managing, if you have a bunch of units, the more units, you usually can get a better deal in insurance, right? So it's like it's a volume thing. So if you're with a property management company that has a lot of units and it is managing a lot of properties, they can get you cheaper insurance on your property just because of the volume discount and the relationship that they have with the insurance carrier, okay? The next thing you want to do is create a rehab budget for bids, right? So this is another thing. You should have a general idea, especially after doing the physical due diligence phase. You should have, and if you haven't listened to that, listen to the last podcast. It goes over that. You should already have some of the bids and stuff for your contractors. So you should have a rehab budget. All right. So you'll know going in about what you need, as far as financially, what you're going to need to invest, how much capital you're going to need to invest to get the property where you need to be. Year to date real estate tax bill for current and prior year. Again, this is something that you do want to ask for and obtain. The biggest thing is you want to make sure that they've paid it, right? Because if they haven't paid it and you brought that property, man, guess what? You're on the hook. Okay. If you just want to know the good information, you can look that up at the city or the county, and see what it's been assessed at and what the bill was for the last several years. Okay. So, but you do want to get that from them. Make sure that it has been paid and see what it's expected to be. Okay. And again, understand, once you buy that property, the assessment of that property will more than likely raise, because nothing, none of that stuff is assessed at what it's really worth. Per se, 9 times out of 10 is assessed pretty much lower than what it's actually worth and what it sells for. But once you buy it, that the assessment changes to the purchase, 80% of the purchase price. So hey, the last few years they've been paying $20,000 a year. We've bought it for X amount. We probably can expect that to be $30,000, right? So that works into your projections, right? So you're not saying, yeah, it's $20,000 a year in taxes, investors, or telling yourself it's $20,000 a year, and then that tax bill comes and it's $10,000 more, right? So you prepare yourself for the hit, and know that that's coming. All right. The biggest thing here, it is very time consuming. There are companies that do this. You can pay them and they'll do this. Or again, this is what your team can do. You can do if you don't have a team yet, or a combination of the two. You want to review all leases and addendums and check for expiration dates, security deposits. All leases are signed, how many expire in the same month, and the security deposits on file. Guys, that is a lot of work. Okay. If you're talking about 48 units or more, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of paperwork. It's a lot of, it's a lot of verifying. And you're going to want to go to your rent rolls, right? The rent rolls and that, and all of this stuff, and the leases and the addendums, that should all match up. If it's not matching up, be very wary. Be very wary. Okay. But that's why that stuff is important. You want to make sure. I know one thing that's common in the industry that we do is we just want the front page and the back page of every lease, so we can see, right? And then also the addendums, right? If there's any addendums that they're being charged money, we want to see those signed as well. But the first page is going to give you all that legal information that's very important. And then that last page is just making sure that it's signed. Me personally, whenever we've gone through a sale, I will send them the whole lease. I will not send them the first page and the last page. I will send them everything so they can see that we have managed this properly. And this is more than what you need and what you requested. Okay. But that's going to be the most time consuming thing for the financial due diligence, is going through all those leases, going through all those addendums, checking the security deposits, and making sure that everything is everything is evening up and everything is adding up. Okay. The last thing you want to do is find out that they've been screwing people around on security deposits and they're not there. Okay. That also will be on the rent roll, what everybody's security deposit was, how much it is together. That should match what is in. So the security deposits are held in their own bank account. You usually have to do it at some type of title company, where it's held, and in an escrow, and it should match up with your rent rolls. Maybe it might be a little bit off because of those 30 days. They've kept some and people are gone, right? Or they reimbursed them and the people are gone. So it might be off a little bit and not caught up all the way on paper, but it should be damn close. Okay. And what's not there should be easily accounted for by saying if it's vacant or not. If it's all full, it should be the same in that account as it is on the rent rolls. All right. You want to contact the utility companies for actual expenses, or they can provide you with every bill that was charged and paid for those utilities: water, electric, gas, sewer. If there's phone for the office, internet for the offices, there's cable, TV in the gym or the clubhouse. You want to see all those expenses, so we want to contact utility companies or have them contact utility companies and give us the last 12 to 24 months worth of bills that have been charged and paid. We want to know exactly what we are paying for. Another way to know if, hey, they're paying way too much for this, right? If you get to where they've been using the same trash company for 4 years and they haven't looked at an alternative, they haven't looked at a competitor, chances are that you're overpaying and you might find a better deal somewhere else. All right. And a list of all lease concessions and incentives. This is very important because concessions can make a big difference. And really the concessions themselves should show that you should see on the rent roll and know right away, like, okay, this says $800, but they're paying $750. There's a concession there, right? And they said, okay, they're supposed to be paying $800. They're paying $750, but it's not showing 50 is late, right? That means that there's a concession there. So you want all the lease concessions listed. So again, you know right away why those numbers look the way they do. And you can also say, I'm not giving nobody that kind of concession, right? So you'll know right away how that affects your NOI in the future, all right? And incentives. Incentives can be various things. Free covered parking or free garage for the first 6 months, or no pet rent for the first 6 months. It could be a lot of different incentives. So you want to know all these things so you can make sense of any what appears to be discrepancies in the rent rolls and the lease and addendums that are signed. All right. And you want to get financial approval from your lender with contingency dates. All right. So, excuse me. All right. So once you have all this information, because any lender that you go to, they need all of this, right? So that's part of your due diligence, right? You want to give them all of this, and you do want to make sure you get this within the contingency dates. We're getting this for two reasons. We need to know it, and the bank needs to know it because they need to know what the hell they're financing on, right? But we just use the same method that the bank uses, right? We don't use our own method. Right? Like at the end of the day, the bank's going to say, this is how we evaluate it. We want to do it how the bank's doing it so we know, and we're prepared for, so we know and we're prepared for the process, right? We don't want to do it any other way. We want to do it the way they do it because ultimately the lender decides if this deal goes down or not. All right. So, guys, thank you for joining. That's the end of the financial due diligence. So in the next room, we're going to talk about the legal due diligence, which is also very important. And typically, guys, everybody should have legal representation when you're doing these things. So they will be able to help you with some of this. But again, thank you guys for joining me here at the Multifamily Man Podcast, powered by Total Wealth Academy. Again, my name is Angelo Webb. See you next time.